Hello, and welcome to episode 32 of Design Curious Podcast. I'm so glad you're here today. I'm your host and mentor, Rebecca Ward. Today we have an interview with Andrea Liebross, and she is a coach and speaker and a podcast host. And I'll tell you all about her in a minute, but first I want to remind you we have a download for you. It's a free download that talks about the 3 things I wish I had known before I started my career in interior design. So you can learn those 3 things and get on our mailing list. And that you can find in the show notes along with everything else we talk about in today's episode. Just more information about my design mentor and everything else that you love about this show. So let's learn a little more about Andrea before we hear from her. Besides being a coach, speaker, and a podcast coach, she is soon-to-be published author and is known for helping bold, ambitious women make clear, confident decisions so that they can get exactly what they want every time and not just add to another thing on their to-do list. Andrea's clients become "I've got this" kind of women by creating their own custom secret sauce for success in both life and business. The sauce has just 2 ingredients: the right mindset and solid systems. Andrea shows women how to shift from believing what they want is impossible, complex, and daunting to possible just by simplifying, making things doable and fun, even the systems, and adding a bit of confidence. Andrea's signature process leads them to find success on their own terms and ultimately joy and freedom in life and business. After graduating from Dartmouth College and marrying the guy that lived down the hall, Andrea and her husband settled in Indianapolis. Over the last few decades, Andrea has started 3 successful businesses and ultimately became a certified business and life coach, all while raising 2 kids, now ages 21 and 18, and several giant puppies. I really enjoyed my conversation with Andrea. I can tell that she is also an amazing coach that I would likely sign up with if I wasn't already doing some amazing work with other coaches. So she is definitely a contender for you if you're looking for a coach. She does coach interior designers as well as other professions for women. And so let's hear from her today. You're now listening to Design Curious, a place where you, creative one, are here to learn about what it really is like to be an interior designer. And I'm your host and mentor, Rebecca Ward. If you're worried about how to succeed in a creative career, if you're ready to learn your next steps to become an interior designer, and if you want the satisfaction of doing something you love every day, you are in the right place. Grab a coffee, a notebook, and let's dig into today's episode. Hi, Andrea. Thank you for coming on Design Curious Podcast today.
Thanks for having me, Rebecca.
Yeah, and I have been looking into all the things that you do, which is a lot: a coach, a speaker, podcast host. Why don't you tell the audience a little bit about all those things and what you do?
Yeah, all the things. So I think to summarize it, what I love to do and what I do is I help female entrepreneurs, small business owners, CEOs, leaders, and we can use that. We could talk about how I define a leader, because it doesn't mean you have to be leading a Fortune 500 company. Leaders really use their energy and brain power, time and money efficiently and effectively so that they create a business and a life that they really love and aligns with who they want to be. So I always say our 3 most valuable resources are time, money, and energy. Mm-hmm. Time, money, and brain power, kind of depending on how we want to think about that. And how do we use those to get what we want?
Great.
So that's what I love doing.
Good. So take us back to when you started your first business. How did you get into that? What were you dealing with?
Well, probably like a lot of your listeners, I worked actually way back in the day. I was an employee of a hospital. I'm a speech language pathologist. And once my son was born, we decided that I was going to stay home. And then I had a daughter, and kind of 5 years or so into that stay-at-home mom journey, I decided that yes, I loved being at home, but I also loved being out and about and helping people. So at that point, I started my first business, which kind of just fell into my lap. It was a part-time kind of gig. I could work from home. It had very flexible hours. So when I started that business, the thing that was prominent in my mind was, how was I going to integrate this with being a mom? Like
Right.
that was the first and foremost kind of question that I had. Okay.
Yeah.
So I really wasn't thinking about how I was going to grow professionally or personally. I was just really concerned with like, I want to work, I want to do something, I want to use my brain in some capacity, but it's got to fit into with my family.
Mm-hmm.
By the time I got to starting business number 2, I had learned, yes, I can, it's possible to integrate working and owning a business into a family. So I kind of like checked that box. But then the next box that I needed to check was, yeah, but that first business really wasn't satisfying to me, like in an intellectual way. I wasn't really learning much from it. It's almost like I was a franchise owner. And I really wasn't, but a lot of it was kind of cookie cutter-ish in a sense.
Yeah.
And then by the time I got to business number 2, it's like, all right, I want to kind of do my own thing. I want to kind of figure out how I want to make this happen. And it was a lot of growth in terms of professional kind of growth. And, I like to say that in the beginning of any business or even in your first business, a lot of times it feels chaotic based on confusion because you don't know what to do first, second, and third.
Right.
Now I kind of got to the next place and I had a little more sense of what was going on. Now the chaos was due to success. So, this is actually working. This is going well. And what I was doing is I was recruiting and hiring and what they considered training new business owners, actually. So I was working for a company that's what they did. And there were parts of it I loved and there were parts of it I didn't love. So after being there for 10 years, I left. And I started a third business. And I took from that second business the parts that I really loved and I melded them into a third business, which is the business I'm in now, business and life coaching. So I loved the training aspect. Okay. So I loved when women started a business, they're usually very excited. They're kind of got some butterflies, but they're excited.
Yeah.
However, you get going and you realize, this may not be all it's cracked up to be. This is kind of making an impact on my family. Maybe I'm not making as much money as I thought I would or want to. And that's the part I'm coaching people through. Because if you could kind of get over the first few humps and put some tools, I like to say tools in your toolbox and the right thinking in your brain, then you're going to be successful. So in the business I have now, that's really what I love helping women do. And I help women that are in all stages of their business. So the beginnings, kind of the middles, and I don't want to say the ends, but I like to say the people that are still in that like chaos created by confusion, they don't know what to do, then the chaos created by success, and then kind of the chaos created by, do I want to sell this thing? I've got 20 employees now, or maybe I have 100, what do I do? So all 3 stages of business.
So then did you get coaching when you first started out, or is that something that you wish that you had done in hindsight?
Oh, such a good question. So the first business I was in, I kind of had mentors. Definitely not coaching. And the difference between a mentor and a coach is a mentor is going to kind of give you their perspective from what they've experienced. And guide you in that way. A coach, yes, will give you some perspective, but their job is to ask you hard questions. To ask you hard questions and to stand next to you as your guide or Sherpa along your journey of business ownership and make sure that you kind of don't turn back. So to kind of keep you moving forward, because if they're asking hard questions, there's a lot of doubt that's going to happen. You're going to feel uncomfortable. You're going to have to do a lot of hard things. And if you're human, then you're going to say, I don't know if I want to do this anymore. So the coach's job is to really keep you moving in that right direction. So second business, I had more coaching, but still really wasn't formal coaching until the very end when I was actually contemplating like dissolving and leaving. And at that point, that coach, what made that so amazing, that kind of really first coaching experience I had, was she pointed out to me all the things that were going well. She pointed out and helped me figure out all the things that weren't going so well.
Mm.
And then all the things that I really wanted to do differently. And we kind of, from there, crafted this third business. So now at this point, I think everybody should have a coach. It's not counseling. Counseling kind of helps you navigate the past, make sense of what's gone on and get you to the present. But coaching is really from helping you move from the present into the future and kind of create that future you want.
So good. Yeah, I love that you provided those definitions. I run a mentorship program myself. And so I love that distinction that you said that mentorship, it's taking my own personal experience and helping others move into the next step based on what I think that, my feedback from my experiences. But I also have been coached by many coaches, and I understand that experience of being vulnerable with that coach and having them ask you the tough questions that really get you to the next step, the things that you need to hear that you've been avoiding because of whatever personality or whatever thing that you're doing. And that coach is like, I'm calling you on it and you have to face this. And if you want to move forward. So I love that distinction, even with counseling too, where you're looking more in the past and, dealing with the things that you've dealt with in the past, but that coaching really helps you propel you forward.
Yeah. I think I had a client or a prospective client call this morning, and she said to me, she's like, I'm just not, gaining enough traction in my business. I'm not really happy with where I'm at, kind of giving all the things that weren't going so well. So I told her, I said, listen, these are the 4 things that we're going to work on. Number 1 is clarity, getting clear on what you do really want. 2 is confidence. And this is where that vulnerable piece came in. So when we talk about coaching and confidence, really what coaching is doing is helping you kind of quiet. I call it the frenemy that lives in the back of your head. It's like that little voice that says to you, are you sure you want to do that? I mean, I don't know. You've never done that before. Last time you did it didn't go so well. Like quieting down the frenemy saying, hey, thanks so much for the advice. Try to keep me safe.
Right.
But what I'm really going to do is this. It's that kind of confidence and helping you be vulnerable enough to realize that sometimes things are going to work and sometimes they're not, but you need to actually do hard things, quiet the voice and do the hard thing in order to move forward. So that just actually came. I said to her, she said, I'm not really good and saying what I'm really thinking. And I kind of get timid. I said, we're going to work on that.
Yeah.
We're going to work on that.
You can always grow and improve those things. And that brings up a good point. I think also that in order to change careers, which is what like this podcast is exploring, or start a business, you really have to be in a position where you're willing to be vulnerable and put yourself out there. And if you're just one of those people that can't do that, then maybe it's not, in the cards for you to go forward, or you might need a little extra work. But it really is a requirement, I think, to make that shift in your circumstances in your life.
100%. I think the successful people are the vulnerable ones, are the ones that, our brain wants to keep us safe. It wants to keep things easy and efficient. I like to say our brain is still from like the caveman era. So the caveman didn't want to leave the cave because they might get eaten by the bears. So we don't live in caveman era anymore. We don't need to worry about that. We can actually jump out of our cave, and that there's an element of vulnerability there. There's also an element of, I like to say, how you manage your time is a reflection of how you're managing your mind.
Oh, interesting.
So for the listeners who are like transitioning from that 9 to 5 or starting their own business, this is huge. And this happens with a lot of my clients. I don't know if I'm going to have enough time to kind of in the transition to truly transition.
Yeah.
Am I going to make enough money? When should I leave the 9 to 5? That kind of thing. But really what that comes down to is mind management, like managing your mind so that you can better manage your time. That's another key. That's just like clarity and confidence. Managing your mind so you can manage your time is another thing that I see.
So the person who is going to transition from that 9 to 5 to the new career or business, what can they expect to look forward to that they're going to run into? Like there is going to be more hours that they have to put in for a while, right? Because they have to financially make it viable for them. What else would they be facing?
So I think they have to be okay with being self-directed. Usually people are used to following orders from above. or
Mm-hmm.
having a plan handed to them, or even like they could have created their own plan for their department or whatever. But there's always someone to kind of like check in with.
Yeah.
And when you're a business owner, there's no one to check in with, which is, I think, why coaching, for example, is super important because you
Yeah.
don't have that check in. So you have to be okay with not getting an okay.
Mm-hmm. Right. And sometimes, so like, say a designer is working for another designer, but then they decide they want to go on their own. So part of the appeal of going on your own is that you're have the autonomy now to do your own designs and your
Right.
own work. But then with it comes the responsibility of being, there's no one else to pass that buck to. Like you can't blame it
Right.
on anyone else. You have to take full responsibility. And I suppose there is coaching that needs to happen around that as well.
It's what I call turning obstacles into opportunities.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So you could say, if you're the designer working under someone else and now you decide to go out on your own, okay, there's a little bit of an obstacle there because you're not quite sure what to do, how to price things, how you're going to find clients. And ultimately, you're responsible for everything,
Mm-hmm.
right? So you could say that's kind of an obstacle or a roadblock, or there's lots of stop signs, but I want you to kind of shift your thinking and think of it as an opportunity. Aren't I lucky that I get to decide exactly how much I want to charge or
Yeah.
when I want to work, or
Mm-hmm.
I don't have to follow their template anymore. I can
Mm-hmm.
create my own. So that's mind management too, because you could say to yourself, oh my gosh, but it's a lot of work to create my own template, or I don't know how many hours I want to work. Right?
Yeah.
It's easier just to work for someone else. Not really. It's an opportunity for you to get exactly what you want,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yeah.
But you have to kind of look at it as that.
Yeah. And be willing to be uncomfortable with it for a little
Yeah.
while. Yeah.
Yes. 100%.
Yeah.
100%.
Okay, so you have several clients that you coach who are designers. Can you tell me, is there something different about designers from the other women that you coach?
Yes. All right. So I'm going to tell you, I think there's a difference in the successful designers and the not so successful
Okay.
designers. Okay.
Okay. Yeah, let's talk about
Which,
that.
okay. Which kind of goes for every industry in a
Yeah,
sense.
yeah.
Okay. Designers, though, like to fall back on that. I'm creative. This
Mm-hmm.
isn't in my wheelhouse. Okay. So they like to like use that as their kind of crutch. Okay.
Yeah.
Which is totally true. But I will tell you something interesting. I am not a designer. And I never considered myself very design oriented, arts and crafts, none of it. Like,
Mm-hmm.
wasn't even fun for me. But I recently took like one of those online assessments, and I
Mm-hmm.
actually now have the link to it on my website under favorite tools. It's called the VIA Character Strengths Assessment.
Oh, okay.
And it's a free assessment. And one of my top character strengths is creativity. Okay.
Oh.
So I was like, what does that mean? Because I don't think I'm creative at all. What it really means is I'm a creative thinker. Like I can think strategically. So the designers that are successful can parlay their literal creativity into some creative thinking
Mm.
and think outside the box and not let their, I would call limiting beliefs
Mm-hmm.
keep them back. Right.
Okay. Yeah.
So we all have limiting beliefs. We all
Yeah.
have limiting beliefs. But those that are successful are willing to put their creative thinking hat on, not just their creative design hat
Mm.
on. Okay.
Okay.
So I have one interior design client who is super, super successful. Like she's doubled her profits in 18 months since we've started working
Oh,
together.
wonderful.
She's
Yeah.
grown a team. I mean, she's really doing well. She's like loving what she's doing. And what she had to do is to start to think like a business owner,
Mm.
like in dollars and in cents, like SENSE, like what makes sense.
Yeah.
She had to start looking at numbers, not her favorite.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And she knows it's not her favorite, which is why then she seeks help on it. So she got
Mm-hmm.
really smart on what she was good at and what she wasn't good at too.
Mm.
And
Yeah.
she started to create, I like to say, like, who's your board of directors? Who's on your board of directors? Like, do
Yeah.
you have someone that you go to help with finances? Do you have a legal advisor? Do you have, a coach? Do you have a book? All that kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So she started to realize that. And then I think that the next best step she took and what really kind of kicked her up a notch was that she created a business plan. Now, creative people don't like business plans because they don't know. I'm being very stereotypical, but you don't know like what's going to happen next, or I'm not sure.
Yeah.
And also in this business, you don't necessarily know where the next paycheck is coming from.
Right.
Right. So how could I say I'm going to do something when I don't even know if I'm going to have the resources to do it? Right. All these questions.
Yeah.
But together we created a business plan. I helped her do it. And it has kind of become our working document that we go back to all the time. And it helps her take those next actionable steps. So I see that type of person. And she came from corporate. She actually worked like total corporate, 4 kids, husband travels, but she is a super profitable and successful designer. But I have to give her credit because she recognized that there was this strategic creative thinking piece that had to go along with the creativity piece.
Yeah. So you have to kind of repackage it for designers to really accept that, like, no, you can apply creativity to not like be creative with numbers, but like to the strategic thinking of your business. And then the other part of it is that I love that you said that the business plan that you came up with was a working document. And I think even for myself, sometimes I get paralyzed by like, this has to be the one document that the financial advisor is going to look at. It's got to be perfect. It's got to be like set in stone. But understanding that, no, this is just a tool and it's a working document that you change and update as you go along in your business. I think that is less confining and much easier for a designer to accept because there's a little more fluidity there.
Yeah, there has to be some freedom built into the business plan. So I have 2 parts. Well, there's 9 parts, but in 2 big parts, your vision and then the traction piece. Like, what are you going to do next? And when you get to that traction piece, yes, there are 1 year, I like to call them 1 year priorities because goal seems very scary. And then I say, what's your quarterly focus? So we kind of create 3 to 7 focus areas for the quarter that feed into some of those goals. You don't have to tackle every goal or priority every quarter, but there is fluidity there so that what you're working on maybe this quarter does not necessarily what you have to work on next quarter. And it's literally like a working document that helps guide next steps. That's the key to success. I'll tell you, I have another design client, didn't last very long, but here's why. So she was so adamant that there didn't need to be a strategy. Or as soon as she created a strategy, she fell back on every client is different. And I can't even figure out what I'm going to do this quarter because I don't know what's going to happen. Okay. So that's a little bit of mind management. Like, we don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. Like, I don't know. Do you know? No, we don't know.
Yeah.
Okay. However, that doesn't mean that you can't have a plan or put something in your calendar, right? Or is every client different? Yes. Every client is different because we're dealing with humans.
Yeah.
Like, they are human. Okay. That still doesn't mean that you can't have systems and processes.
Right.
So she resisted, like, adamantly with a big capital A, like resist with a big capital R, having any type of plan, strategy, process. And
did she like to wing it when she would work with her clients?
She liked to wing it. She liked to kind of recreate the wheel every time. And she wasn't getting traction. So it became very frustrating to her. And I obviously pointed these things out. But, she needed that kind of push. Now, 99% of the time people come around and they see that and they welcome the help because that's why they came in the first place.
Yeah.
Once in a while they don't. But I think if you're listening and you are someone who tells yourself every client is different, so I don't know, or I'm not sure what's going to happen tomorrow, so why would I ever have a plan? Or if I create a list of goals or priorities, half of them will never happen. So maybe that's not a good idea anyway. Am I wasting my time? Like, you're not setting yourself up for success.
Yeah. You need to do everything possible your goal is to be a successful business owner ultimately, right?
Yes.
So so you need to put some things in place to help make that happen. There has to be a plan. Yeah.
100%. 100%. Yeah. And it's hard, I think, when you're coming from a 9 to 5 kind of job where your day kind of is planned.
Yeah.
in a sense, or it's got more of a plan than if you're owning your own business.
Mm-hmm.
It's hard to shift your thinking, but it's possible, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it's totally possible.
Yeah. Then for the designers that are starting out, do you have any recommendations for just like some basic mindset traps that they might fall into, some things that they might overcome just to help them kind of get over that first hurdle of really going out on their own?
Mm-hmm. Okay, a couple things come to mind. Number one is all you really need to know is the next best step.
Mm, that's good.
Okay, so you do have to have a vision, or else you're kind of, it's like, think about your GPS. Okay, so your GPS, when you turn it on, number one, it asks you where you're going.
Mm-hmm.
So you could put in a city name, or you could put in a specific address. It doesn't matter. It still will like it. It just needs to know where you're going. Okay, it needs to know where you're going. A lot of times when people start out, it's like, I like to say, they're standing at the bottom of a mountain and they're looking up and they can't see the peak. It's kind of covered in the clouds, but they know it's up there. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
so you need to know your destination. You also, the next thing the GPS is going to ask you is, do we start at your current location? Like, where do we start? Right. So you have to kind of assess like where you're at. Okay, where are you in terms of time, money, and brain power? Like, how much of each of those resources do you have available
Mm-hmm.
to put into the new endeavor? Okay.
Okay.
So that's like knowing where your current location is. Then you have to kind of decide which parking lot you're leaving from. Okay. So I like to call these parking lots are kind of the parking lots of, am I doing this business because I'm wanting to move away from something? Like, I'm moving away from the horrible boss.
Mm.
Okay. And I just want to be my own boss. All right. Are you moving away from something? Or are you in a parking lot where you're wanting to move towards something? What's your mindset here? I'm moving towards being in charge of my own income, and that's exciting to me.
Mm-hmm.
Right? That's another parking lot. And the third parking lot is, you know what? This might be someone that's actually already started a little bit, but nothing's really wrong. It's all actually, everything's kind of okay, but I know it could be better.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay. So you've got to kind of assess where you're at and your thinking. And here's why. Because when the going gets rough and you start to question things, you have to kind of go back to, what's my why? Like, why am I doing this? You've got to keep reminding yourself, because it's very easy to go down the slippery slope. Like, as you're driving down the street, if you're going to get groceries, you know that there's going to be a stop sign along the way because you've traveled this road millions of times. But just because there's a stop sign does not mean that you turn around and go home.
Right.
Right? Like, you're going to keep going. So there's going to, because you want to get to the grocery store to buy food. So it's like, where are you going? Are you moving away from something? Are you trying to move towards something? Are you just trying to make things better?
Yeah.
That's going to get you through the stop sign. Right.
Okay.
So that the stop signs, hopefully they'll turn into just roundabouts someday.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Because roundabouts cause less accidents, or more accidents, but less deaths, or whatever. Roundabouts are just kind of like slow.
Yeah.
Okay. They just slow things down. I happen to live in the city in the US with the most roundabouts actually in the world. But,
wow.
but that's why roundabouts are in my head. Sometimes you'll call them rotaries. So just assess where you're going, just the general direction, even if it's just a city name, your current location, which parking lot you started from, and what are you going to do when you get to that stop sign? Like, are you willing to work on this for as long as it takes?
Mm-hmm.
Are you going to throw the towel in before you get to where you want to go? Because it might be tempting.
Yeah, that's really good advice. Yeah. So if someone listening might want to reach out and work with you, how would they find you?
So I am on social media. I'm on Instagram and Facebook. But here's the thing that I think that might be most helpful to your listeners. So depending on what stage of your business you're in, you might be asking yourself, why am I not getting done? Or why am I not creating the traction I want to create? Like, so I call it like you're stuck in this, I just need to be more productive, or I just need to focus kind of mode. Mm-hmm. So if you go to Andrea's with an S, links with an S, andreaslinks.com, at the very top, you're going to see a link to take the quiz. So
Mm-hmm.
I've developed a quiz that helps you figure out like what your productivity archetype is. Like
Oh.
how are you most productive?
Mm-hmm.
What's getting in your way of productivity? There's also in that same link another quiz. So let's say you're like, okay, I've got my act together, but
Yeah.
now I'm ready to scale my business to another level.
Mm-hmm.
There's another quiz called the Business Freedom Finder Quiz. So you may have gotten to the place where, oh my gosh, this is so successful, but I feel like I'm so involved in this business. Do I need to hire someone? Do I need to
Yeah.
hire more people? Do I need to raise my rates? That's for someone whose business is just a little bit more developed to
Yeah.
kind of give you a sense of where you need to focus. So I think if you head to andreaslinks.com and find those quizzes, that's probably the best way to start to hear me and listen
Yeah.
to some of this thinking. And I also have my own podcast, which you can also follow, called
Yeah.
Time to Level Up. Time to Level Up. And I think I just recorded episode 120. So
Oh, great.
the whole
Wonderful.
library there.
Good.
Yeah.
Good. Yeah, great. And so in that podcast, do you address more mature businesses or businesses starting out or just level up in life in general or?
It's really leveling up yourself personally and professionally.
Okay. Yeah.
So it's for anyone who actually, you don't even have to own a business, but it's geared towards women
Mm-hmm.
who own businesses and whether or not they or are in charge of making their own money. So some of my clients are commission based, for example.
Oh,
So they may
yeah.
not be the business owner, but they kind of are in a sense, like they
Mm-hmm.
need to run their own show.
Right.
So I say there's two ingredients to the secret sauce. There's systems and then there's mindset. And
Mm-hmm.
I spend time on both of those in the podcast.
Okay, great. We'll put links to all of those things in our show notes so that everybody can find it. And I always love a good quiz too, so I might go check that out.
Go check it out.
Yeah.
Go check it out.
Yeah,
And
finding out.
it'll give you some direction. And you can always, there's a link there too to connect with me if you want to do a complimentary strategy call. I'm always up for that.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much, Andrea. I really appreciate you coming on the podcast this week.
You are welcome. Thanks, Rebecca.
Yeah, we'll talk to you later.
Okay.
So as you can see, Andrea has a lot of great advice. I love all she says about mindset and just hearing about how she built 3 businesses. And I just think that's so impressive. And I know that she herself had to overcome some mindset obstacles to build 3 large and successful businesses as well. So lots to be learned from her. You can find her contact information in the show notes. Go ahead and reach out to her and learn more from her as well. So stay tuned. Next week, we'll have another great episode for you to discover if interior design is the career for you. And until next time, stay creative. Thanks for listening. If you love this episode, please leave a rating and a review. This helps me reach other curious creatives like you. If you have a topic request or would like to contact me, simply head over to my website, rwarddesign.com, or email me at podcast@rwarddesign.com.